Welcome to the Rock is George podcast. I'm your host, George Dionne. Be sure to check out my new and improved website, rockisgeorge.com, where you can find all our social media and streaming platforms, as well as podcast episodes, knac.com exclusives, album and show reviews, and much, much more. My guest for episode 233 is bassist and vocalist MATT Bissonette of the power trio, The Squirts. I know what you're thinking. Get your mind out of the gutter. It's a reference to the Little Rascals. MATT Bissonette, beyond The Squirts, is an in-demand bassist, having played with numerous top acts ever since the 80s. He's played for Rick Springfield, David Lee Roth, Ringo Starr, SHEENA Easton, most recently Elton John, and many, many more. He had a little side project that he started sometime around 2003 with his fellow Rick Springfield bandmates George Bernhardt and Roger Carter. They named it The Squirts. They've recently released their third studio album entitled The Squirts III. And here's MATT Bissonette to tell you more about it. If I knew absolutely nothing about The Squirts, how would you describe the band's music to me?
The Squirts, that's a good question. The Squirts is just pretty much a fun band of just a bunch of old guys that don't take themselves too seriously. Even when we were younger guys, it kind of is what the name is. We're big Little Rascals fans and, stupid humor. And we try to put some, the lyrics, a little bit heavier sometimes, but it's basically just music, and music sometimes in our lives, it gets so serious that we do projects that have these, these big undertowing meanings and stuff like that. We just decided to just write fun music and music that we like. So it's pretty lighthearted, and some of the themes get a little heavy, but we try and approach them all with a sense of humor because we're too humble to take ourselves too seriously, and it's just music,
Now, The Squirts is made up of yourself and George Bernhardt and Roger Carter. Some may call it a super group, others a group of veteran musicians. You released your first album in 2003. I'm going to ask how it all came together, but I imagine it has something to do with you guys being the backing band of Rick Springfield at the time.
It's exactly how it was. Super group, that's funny because super old group is what you mean. But we were... I got called to play bass with Rick Springfield probably about 2000, 2001. George had already been there playing guitar, and then Roger joined a year after I joined. And we first started just jamming over at my house in my studio, writing music for TV and movie stuff, just soundtrack stuff. And we, had my drums set up there and guitar amps and everything, and we would just kind of jam. And I've known George from our band, the Mustard Seeds, from years ago. So we had written together quite a bit in the past, but we just started kind of coming up with this sound that turned out to be The Squirts. And we did like a few songs. We go, let's just follow this through and make a CD. So we did it. And then we were at the airport with Rick and we go, hey man, we have a great idea. How about we open up for you and we play our songs, and it'll make you sound better because it's the same band, the same gear. So when you come on, that's how we pitched it to him. It would be that much better. And then he goes, okay, yeah. And I go, hey, is it okay if we sell CDs? Yeah, that's okay. How about T-shirts? How about hats? And Rick, being the sweetheart that he is, said yes to everything. And we probably opened up for him for 4 or 5 years. And it was great. It was like getting a double payday because we'd make more for the gig and stuff. And we had a lot of people that liked Rick that would watch us. So it was a great situation.
You released a couple albums back in the early 2000s. You had The Squirts in 2003 and then 2 Resquirted in 2006. And here we are almost 20 years later with your third album. I would assume as veteran musicians that are in the studio a lot and playing live a lot, kind of your steady gigs got in the way of continuing the next Squirts album?
Yeah, that's a good way of putting it. It's a nice way of putting it. We all kind of went on with our lives. George moved to Nashville, and Roger has his studio, the Doghouse Studio in Woodland Hills, and I've gone on, done other gigs, and traveled a lot. so we kind of lost touch for a little while, even though we're all friends and we do things together, different band stuff with different bands and recordings. Um, I don't know what happened that triggered it. I think it's probably like everybody during COVID, you had the time to kind of revisit things and kind of go. And COVID also gave everybody a reason to write, because first thing that happened with me is when COVID hit, I just sat behind my piano and tried to relearn music and how theory works, and when would you have the time to do that? Normally you're going out doing stuff, so it made you have time for a lot more things. As horrible as it was horrifying for bands because they were deemed unessential and tours were canceled and all that stuff. And thank God it came back. But it did get everybody a time to kind of clean out their closets of things they've had hanging out there and finishing things that you never had the time to do. So I think we just started going one song at a time. We dug back in the vault of a couple songs that we recorded rhythm tracks like 30 years ago that we found on a cassette or something. It just gave us the time to do it. And then we all kind of honed in our studios to figure out how we can do this and see each other record and stuff like that. So, and a lot of the songs were kind of written about COVID and how crazy that was, and the frustrating situations and the political situations, the spiritual situations, the whole things. So it gave us another opportunity to write lighthearted things about, a horrible situation, which it was, So thank God everybody came out of it the way we did, and we're back to everybody playing live and stuff. I never thought that was going to happen again. I thought the rest of life was going to be Daryl's garage, as great as that is, that nobody was going to go out. But I was just playing last week and looking out at people and going, it's like it never happened, which is kind of weird in itself.
And I think it'll never happen again. I think we learned some lessons.
We learned some lessons, and hopefully we won't do that again.
Yeah. Well, the new Squirts album is 3. It came out earlier this year through F-Bomb Records. You guys mentioned kind of piecing some old things together, completing some things, maybe some new things on this album. Does everybody write, or you're a power trio, so you all play instruments, but does everybody write lyrics and full songs, or is it pieced together?
It's just me. I do everything. I write, I sing. No, I'm kidding. We all kind of have our strong suits and stuff. So we all, so I wrote all the lyrics and stuff because that's kind of was, my job, I guess, for this. But we all have ideas for lyrics and stuff and themes. And once we get on an idea, like a lot of people write a lot different. Like with Elton, he'll write a song with Bernie gives him the lyrics, and then he writes to the vision of what those words are. Every song on this record was approached differently. Roger would come in with an idea for a groove, and then we would write around that. Or George would have something stewing in his brain, and he'd send me stuff, and I'd write to that or kind of change some things around. It was really kind of a all hands on deck, no reason or rhyme to anything. It just kind of, I'd come up with an idea, send it, and George would change it around. So it's an equal opportunity band, and everybody kind of does their thing. So, which is great because we split everything publishing. So there's no reason I got to get my songs in this or whatever. There's none of that. So we just started writing. One thing we wanted to do on this record was we wanted to try and put a bridge in every song. And the lost art of the bridge, big Beatle guys, and Beatles always have. Somehow the Beatles managed to get a verse, chorus, bridge, chorus. However they did that in 2.5 minutes is still beyond me. It's still like when you listen to old themes for like the Andy Griffith Show or for these old TV shows. They slammed in so much music in 30 seconds or 45, whatever it was. They would write a verse, a chorus, and a bridge in a theme song in 60 seconds, or 30 seconds, however they're long. And we just really wanted to come with off-the-wall bridges for these songs and make them completely unrelated to the song. Like most of the songs kind of take a left turn at the bridge. So that's what we're really fond of. And, the bridge is something that kind of left the auditorium a long time ago. But the good thing about doing an album in our 60s is that we don't have any preconceived ideas of getting on the radio or, our things are going to get to number one. We just write what we want to write. And we've played with a lot of different bands, and we've it's kind of our chance to do what we want to do. And that's a blessing to be able to do that. So we don't take it for granted.
Well, let's talk about a couple of the songs that you released as promotional singles. I kind of laughed at the title, Not a Good Time for a Clown, but once I heard the song, I was really impressed with it. Why don't you tell me a little bit what inspired that song?
Well, thanks. Yeah, I love that one. We that one was kind of that one, and funny you should ask, were kind of the two songs that were based on the frustration that we're feeling when COVID hit. Being in California, it was a little tough because it was everything's mandated, everything is boom, boom, boom. You can't do this. First thing they do is musicians are unessential, so all tours are canceled. Then it got down to that you can't go to church. If you go to church, that the church is deemed unessential. And then it even got to the point where if you went to church and you moved your mouth singing, then that's punishable by death. I'm like kind of going, okay, so meanwhile, liquor stores open, strip clubs open, boom, boom, boom down the list. And you kind of go through this reasoning of the government. And, I mean, as a Christian, I respect the government and first, but when it gets to a line where you're crossing lines that are just ridiculous, you kind of just, not that you want to go out and protest, or go out and change the world or anything, but you have to kind of laugh about it and go, everybody just kind of went in their bubbles and to take care of their families. And, whatever religion you are, whatever political side you are, it just exploded into this white noise of just, and then the online thing took off where you could say whatever you want to say about anybody with no repercussions. And newscasters would screw up stories and make up things and say things and never apologize for it. And to this day, you see things that the news will get wrong and then it'll put a little retraction in it going, well, the damage is done. You've already swayed people. So the whole situation, not to get heavy, was just, we were just laughing about the things that we'd see on the news every day. So Not a Good Time for a Clown basically is that time where if you sneezed at a bus stop, the Gestapo's coming after you and taking you someplace and you're never seen again. All these crazy decisions were made and people, you were afraid to say anything. And if you, God forbid, you say something wrong, you're going to pay that price. So that's what that is about, is, thought police kind of stuff. But again, it's wrapped in a funny story about like you're in a circus and the clown goes a step too far and he's gone, So it's kind of an underhanded, funny thing.
And clever.
Thank you. Thank you.
Song you recently released is The Other Side of Paradise. Why don't you tell me a little bit about that one?
That was one of the first songs we did years ago. When we were with Rick Springfield, we were playing a casino in Milwaukee, and Rick and I set up a Pro Tools studio in his hotel room, and we were writing songs for his album, which became Rick's album Venus and Overdrive. And during that time, we were also recording songs in George's friend's basement in Milwaukee. We were doing these rhythm tracks. So we had this song from 25 years ago that George found a cassette for, and we really liked the music, and then we put words to it. We did it years ago and then mixed it and then just sat on it. That was one of the songs we revisited. So it's funny how you have a song and you write lyrics and people go, well, what's that about? And I've learned over the years, because it was really exciting. I used to think I was really clever and smart by going, well, what that song's about is the inner turmoil of man, just kind of get into this thing. And I've kind of learned that I like the way John Lennon would look at it. They'd ask him what help is about. And he goes, well, what does it mean to you? Because everyone's going to hear a song and it's going to be a word picture in their mind. Like when I see that band XTC, which is one of my favorite bands, when I hear one of their songs, I immediately have this picture in my mind, like, whatever that is. And it's probably completely different than what Andy Partridge would write about, or those guys, Colin, or whoever would write the songs. So it's kind of weird, like in interviews when people say, what is it about? To me, it means a certain thing, but to anybody else, it could mean anything else. So it even happened with Roger doing the video. So Roger did both videos for both songs. And we just said, Roger, do whatever you want to do. So he got on the AI thing and came up with this cartoon video thing, which is completely different than what the song is in my mind. But to me, that's the way Roger heard, he's a drummer, so drummers hear things differently than anybody else. So he made it into this comedic guy that gets married and he's like, what did I do with my life? And it goes back to, the days he was playing cards with his friends and, that whole marriage thing. And I've been married for 33 years now. And so it's kind of funny to me to see that. I keep apologizing to my wife. That's not what I meant, whatever. But it's funny that he went that route with it. I mean, originally, I really don't have any idea. It's kind of, being stuck in a situation that you don't want to be in. And the other side of paradise, I guess, would be you're in hell because it's, you're going through things you don't want to go through. But I don't know if even in our own band, we interpret things differently, which is the blessing about being in a band. Everybody's got their take,
The album 3 is released on F-Bomb Records. Is this your own label?
No, it's a friend of ours, Dave, who has a label called Vanity Records. I'm not too sure what F-Bomb thing means or whatever, all that stuff, but that's his thing. But yeah, the record's out on that label, on Vanity Records also, and we also released it as downloads on Bandcamp for the Squirts. So a bunch of different ways to get it out there.
And you're kind of taking the old school approach with its release. You have physical CD copies, and you're only streaming it at Bandcamp. You're not doing Spotify or Apple or any of the others, correct?
That's correct. But, to be honest, I don't really understand the new world as far as, the first day you put out a record, it's out on a lyric video on YouTube. Before I even knew it, our songs were all on YouTube individually. And then it probably came out on Spotify. I haven't checked. It's probably on Apple. I mean, I don't even know how that stuff works. All I know is every 4 months I'll get a check from Spotify for 3 cents or something like that. So I feel like saying, why don't you just keep the 3 cents, give it to somebody, and plus I'd like to see the accounting for that 3 cents. How did I get that 3 cents? Anyway, the music business is so crazy for that stuff that I have no idea. And it's probably out on those platforms without me even knowing it.
It's not.
Yeah. Oh, really? Okay.
It's just Bandcamp.
Okay. Well, I'm sure eventually it'll end up there. But I do know on YouTube somehow, I don't know how it gets out to that. Do you know how that works?
People probably burn the CD version and then upload it as a video.
Right. So, yeah. It's, when we were writing with the Squirts in the beginning, we used to have these deals with music publishers. They would pay us $1,500 each or whatever to write a song. Then they'd use it and play it on all these TV shows. So you're getting BMI residual money. And then they'd give you a back end payment of another $1,500. And we had the hundreds of songs. So we were all like, this is it, man. This is the rest of our life. We'll just play music and write songs. And then around 2008, things started changing with the bands giving away their music for promotion for their things for TV shows, and the whole thing just kind of crashed, So I mean, we still do it, and but there's smaller amounts of money, but a lot more streams and a lot more different ways to make music. So being older, and I don't have the energy to figure out that new world of how to monetize. I just want to write music and have fun, So crazy world.
Oh, most bands are turning into either a live act or a t-shirt company.
Yeah, exactly. Well, it sounds like what you're talking about a lot more than I do. So I go with you.
So speaking about live, what are the chances of the Squirts doing a couple of live shows somewhere along the way to promote this album?
Well, we'd love to do it. We're talking about it, and we love playing live, and it's fun with 3 guys to try and emulate the album. Of course, we would probably have to have some help computer-wise to at least to have some of the background vocals and stuff. That's kind of what we've done before, and or hire another person to cover those parts. But we're into it. We just would have to find the right band to open up for or the right situation. And, we would love to do it. It's kind of crazy, getting in a van with a bunch of 64-year-old guys and traveling around the world and driving yourself. But I'm ready for it. Like anything that I think is valid music and good, I would do whatever it takes to do.
Currently, you're out on tour with Kevin Cronin of
Yep.
Styx, of REO Speedwagon. You guys are opening for Styx.
Right.
How's the tour going so far?
It's great. It's us and Sticks, and then Don Felder. Don Felder plays first. We play, then Sticks plays, and it's going great, man. Everybody just gets along famously. It's really a bunch of good guys. I love the Sticks guys. They're just super cool, and I just sit by the side of the stage, every night and watch Felder play, and then watch Sticks play. And Sticks music, man, I never realized how hard that music is, and I always tell them. I don't know, maybe I'm getting older and more senile or something, but it's just a lot of progressive music. We're playing the whole High Infidelity record, and they're playing the Grand Illusion record. And it's pretty challenging, and it's just fun to see them pull it off. And they sing like birds, and I've never seen so many people on stage that could sing that high. It's like Tommy Shaw, and then the other guys, Lawrence, and the other guys are singing higher to them. So it's a great show. We got one more month to go, and then after that, I'm not sure what's going to happen. So we'll see. You probably know more than I do.
I might, but I might have a question on that later. Don Felder, didn't you appear on his latest album?
Yeah, I've played on a couple of his. I wrote a song with him and Tommy Shaw probably 20 years ago. And when I saw Don, I was like, yeah, I wrote a song with you. And he goes, a song called Wash Away on one of his records. Um, I think that was the name of I think that's the name of the song. Anyway, so Don called me last couple summers ago, right when I got done with Elton. He called me to come over his house and record at his house. And I did a couple songs on his new record now. So then when I saw him, we were talking about it. The funny story with Don was that he called me up in August, and it's like 100 degrees here in LA, and I brought all my basses to his house, like 10 basses. I set them up, I tuned them all, and I'm ready to go. And then he goes, okay, let's go. Hey, I want you to use my Sadowski bass. And I go, buddy, why didn't you tell me that before I just carried all my basses in here, man? I'm sweating, dripping all over. So every time I see him, I'll thanks, man. Thanks, my back. Thanks a lot. So a great guy, a great singer and guitar player.
You mentioned Elton John. You were with his band from 2012 to 2023. Any particular moments that stand out amongst that run as like, wow?
Well, several. I mean, there was several moments that I was just kind of going. I remember when I got the gig, Davey Johnstone told me, he goes, "You're either going to love me or hate me in a year from now, because you're going to go to places you never even knew existed." And like a year later, we're playing some castle in Romania or some crazy Czech city, and I'm looking at him like this, and he's looking at me like, "I told you so. I told you this was going to happen." And I'd never even heard of half the places we played at, because when I first got in, it was like 5 nights a week shows, just hitting it all ramping up to this farewell tour that they had a plan for way back then, and Keith Bradley, the manager, and Elton, they had this plan of just, saturating the market until this final farewell tour, and then major cities and baseball stadiums. So I'm a big baseball guy. My son plays baseball. So the touring of all the baseball stadiums was probably the highlight for me, being on these fields, And then, I remember the last show we played, and how crazy it was that it finally was coming to an end. I remember we drove out, Elton drives out in his golf cart, and we all walk out to the stage, and like 50 crew guys and women were stand against the wall and gave high fives going to the stage. And it was like, this plan came through from beginning to end through COVID and everything. I remember during COVID with that show, it was one of the first shows to go back out. It was like a person every day cramming that thing in your nose to check you out. And the fact that they had the guts to go back. I mean, I can't imagine how much money they spent in COVID protection and stuff, and hiring people to do it. And a couple of the guys got, sure enough, we start the tour after COVID, and the third show, Elton gets COVID. So it's like, we're thinking this is not going to happen, but they made it happen. So just the whole thing was just like one long pinch me. This is crazy, playing for 100,000 people sometimes. And that whole thing was just pretty surreal,
Yeah. And, when it comes to music, though, to say it's over you can't really say it's over. There'll be another thing.
Yeah. And it's not over. It's not over because we're doing a gig in Singapore next month. So he's still doing one-offs, and he needs to keep doing this. He loves to do it, and he does a lot of the stuff for charity and stuff. And yeah, we just I think we've got like 4 or 5 more gigs this year, and they've been kind of working out where I can do them and also work with Kevin. But yeah, he's I don't think you I think you have to drag him from the piano or he'll never going to stop. So
Now you've had some notable gigs throughout your career, obviously Elton John, and now with Kevin Cronin, and with David Lee Roth, and Joe Satriani, and Rick Springfield, and Ringo Starr. Were there any acts that you were part of that you wish that your time there lasted just a little bit longer?
um, interesting enough, that's a great question. Probably ELO because with Jeff Lynne because we rehearsed for 4 weeks. We did VH1 storyteller show, and then we shot a live video, a couple TV shows, and then they canceled the tour because it was right around 9/11 and some things were going on, and that never went out on the road. And that was really a bummer because we were sounding great, we were ready to go, and then they pulled the plug. And by the way, Jeff paid us for the whole tour that we were supposed to go out for, so he was very gracious about that. But that was something that never got off the ground that I'm glad eventually down the road he put a band together and is doing great with it. But that was something to me because I, grew up, with all these people that that you've mentioned, you grow up listening to them and it's kind of you've played their songs in bar bands and you've done the stuff, but then you are playing with them and you got your in-ears on and then you hear the real person singing. So I remember the first song we were playing with Jeff Lynne, I can't remember what it was exactly, but it was a famous ELO song. And then hearing his actual voice in my head, it's just those moments you just kind of go, wow, how did I get here to play with these people? And it's just, growing up in Detroit, could easily just been working a regular job, but somehow God blessed my brother and I to have these opportunities. So Greg and I, my brother, were just talking the other day. We were just naming bands and just talking stories about stuff going. It's just amazing how, my mom and dad just kind of steamrolled us into starting this thing that paved our lives for all these opportunities. And we don't take them for granted because there's players that could do this gig 10 times better than us. And we know that. And we're just very thankful and, very appreciative of where we are.
Was there a gig that you were offered over the years that you had to pass on for one reason or another that you were like, damn, I really wish I could have took that one?
Greg and I, we were playing with Gino Vanelli when I first moved to LA in '85. And I had a band called A440 and we had a record deal. Our record came out on the same label the same day as Bon Jovi's Slippery Than Wet. So it's kind of a Spinal Tap story about how we just got demolished by Bon Jovi. So that band didn't go anywhere. It was a really good band, kind of like a Duran Duran kind of a band. But we were going to go. We went on tour with that band, and we opened up for that band, Aha. That Take Me Home. So, but before then, Greg and I got the gig with Gino, and we're playing Brother to Brother and all these crazy Gino Vanelli songs that we grew up with. And then I had to go on the road with that band and I couldn't do it. So that was something to this day that I still talk to Joe, because Joe Vanelli works with Kevin all the time. I just still go, man, that would have been fun to play that music because it was really challenging. It wasn't like most gigs. This gig was like, you just gotta, and Gino was pretty intense and just giving it every night. And I was bummed about that. That was probably the one that got away.
He's the living inside myself guy. That's what I'm for.
Exactly. Yeah.
Now I would imagine the David Lee Roth Skyscraper tour in '88 and '89 must have been pretty wild. I mean, this was like peak '80s extravagance as far as music and sex, drugs, and rock and roll went.
It was definitely it was a definite crazy time. I mean, I'm a pretty normal, calm kind of guy. I like to go and read and hang out and write songs, whatever. And I remember before when Billy, Steve, and Greg and Brett Tuggle were in the band, the first album came out, Yankee Rose and all that stuff. I remember going to see them with my friend up in Fresno, and we're just looking at each other, and it's just like, it's just another world. It was '80s at its peak, and I'm looking at my friend going, this is insane. This is like a freak show. It's amazing. It's crazy. but that's not me, man. I could never hang with this. I mean, it's like I'm so happy for my brother and for these guys, but that's like, and then a couple years later, they were asking me to write songs. Everyone was kind of contributing songs, and because of Greg, they asked me to write some, and a song got on the Skyscraper record. And then Billy decided to leave, and then it was like, Dave goes, "Your brother plays bass, right? You write with him all the time." He goes, "Well, let's get him." So once again, it was one of those situations that I didn't have to audition for. I mean, I've auditioned for a million gigs, but that one, like the Elton gig, was just like, let's get your brother, or let's get him to play. So I was, at that time, I was out on the road with that band A440, but also with SHEENA EASTON at the time, playing strut and playing these with this girl singer, and it was a completely different world. And all of a sudden, like, you are now going to be in a hard rock band touring around the world. And it was like, when Greg asked me, my first thing was, you ever see Seinfeld where he goes, "Well, I don't want to do that." It was kind of like, my first reaction was, I don't know if I'm capable of doing this. I don't know if I want to do this, but an opportunity like that, you got to do it. And I mean, of course, I loved Van Halen and I loved Dave's solo record. And that was like an amazing band and stretching music boundaries. And Dave was just doing every kind of music, and it was really great. So when I first got into it, I mean, I was kind of scared. I was kind of freaked out. I was kind of scared about the backlash of taking a place like Billy's place, because he's so great. And it was fine. By the third gig, it was comfortable, and you got to kind of, you get put in positions like that where somebody or whatever, somebody hears you and they want you to play, and you have to be ready for any style. And Greg and I always talk about music vocabulary, to be ready for any gig that calls you at any time. So you got to practice, you got to be ready and hit the road going strong. So it was kind of a culture shock for me thing at that time. And that was in a different time in my life where I used to drink a lot and stuff. And after I got out of that, a couple of years later, I kind of, didn't drink anymore and all that stuff, straightened up some areas of my life. But it was kind of crazy. It was a crazy time. And I'm glad I got through it. I'm glad I came out of it with my head on my shoulders. But Dave was great and learned a lot about entertaining and about how being on all the time. It was an amazing experience. But it was a scary learning experience, Definitely.
Understandable.
Yeah.
So everyone's talking in the music business about Ozzy Osbourne's passing. Had you had the chance to cross paths with Ozzy in your career?
Yeah. Well, when the guy that we got into Ringo's band with, Mark Hudson from the Hudson Brothers, he was producing Ringo at that time, and he was also producing Ozzy. So we've gone in the studio a couple times with Ozzy. We recorded at his house a few times. Years ago, I got called to audition for Ozzy when Randy was playing drums and Zakk Wylde had just joined the band. And I went in there, and I remember I had auditioned for him and Lita Ford the same day, because they all kind of knew, Sharon Osbourne knew Lita and the whole circle like that. And I went into Ozzy's rehearsal, and Ozzy wasn't there though. But I was kind of playing, going, I'm not the right guy for this, but I'm going to show up and play. And I kind of, certain auditions, the minute you're there, that they probably got somebody lined up. I remember auditioning for Kenny Loggins in '84, and Nathan East had just left. And I knew that they had probably somebody picked out. I think, I don't know who it was exactly, but when you walk in, you're like, they just want to get this over with. I could kind of tell that with Ozzy's thing too. But the good thing was that I got the Lita Ford thing and did her record with Myron Grombacher, and that was great. So there's a reason for everything. There's a reason why you get the gig, and there's a reason why you don't get the gig. But I recorded some songs with Ozzy. Some of them came out and some of them didn't. I played on his daughter's Christmas album, a Christmas song that was released. That was a hit in London. And I remember meeting Ozzy and just having a few conversations with him. At that time, I didn't want to bug him too much with questions and stuff, and we were recording, so it wasn't much time to do that. But he was a really cool guy. I wish I had known him more.
So you're going to be winding down the Kevin Cronin tour soon. Do you have plans to tour with someone else after that?
Not really. I just have a few, probably about 3, 4 more gigs this year with Elton. One's in Singapore, one's in Anaheim by my house,
Hmm.
another one's in Dubai, I think. And so I'm gonna do that. I'm gonna kind of take a little chill pill from the road and hang out with my wife, get to know my wife again, and just finish up a few things that I'm releasing down the road in the next year, half a year, and just kind of just be home for a while. So there's some more talk about doing more stuff with Kevin. They haven't. I know we're doing a cruise next year in February. They're talking about doing more gigs. So whatever comes, I'm ready for.
So what music projects do you have coming down the road? Are you going to do something solo? You working with somebody? What are you doing?
Well, I have a jazz record. One thing on bass that I've in my life, I'm pretty good playing bass and I can play pretty decent solos. But every time I hear my bass solos, it always sounds like the same licks over and over. Just a year older and learn a couple things, but nothing. I haven't taken that step up because when you hear a sax player, you kind of go, he's playing what he hears in his head. When I'm playing a bass solo, first thing that happens in a bass solo is everybody stops playing but the drums. So you kind of have to keep the beat going. You don't get the luxury to play with a rhythm section playing behind you that you can play something melodically. It's just different. So I have this jazz record that's coming out probably in a few months. And it's, the band's playing, but I sang all the melodies and then played them on the bass, kind of like George Benson. So, and then once I sang the melody, because in your head you can just go like, but to play that on the bass you'd have to go. So I soloed everything on the bass and learned those lines, and the whole time going, man, I would never have played that. So it opened my eyes to a whole new way of playing. So I did that for 8 songs, and this album's called Common Road. It's a solo album coming out probably October maybe. So that's one thing that I'm working on right now. We're going to do some videos when I come home in September with my brother and my friend Ron Pedley. We were the rhythm section for Maynard Ferguson's band in 1981, 82. So that's coming out. And then a few months ago, I went and saw the Dylan movie. And I wasn't really that much of a Dylan guy till I saw that movie. And there's this one scene where he's just playing with his acoustic guitar and his capo. And I went, man, that is Rubber Soul, the Beatles. That is so much of that era. I went home and bought an acoustic guitar and a capo and just banged out 10 songs that kind of are Dylan related and recorded them. So they're all done, and we're going to mix them probably in October and release them at the beginning of the year or Christmas, something like that. So those are 2 things that I'm working on, and possibly another Redcoats. We have a band called the Redcoats. Probably going to do another album with that next year, hopefully, and just keep going. The main thing for me is the writing and having to have something to look forward to, because I can't. Next year Medicare kicks in, retirement or whatever it is coming down the road, and I just can't believe I got here, that I'm alive, number one, and I can't believe I'm at that point where I'm going to have a conversation with somebody about Medicare next year. So I don't want to retire. Musicians don't retire. They're like soldiers. They just fade away, right? So it's like a preacher who wants to die in a pulpit. I just want to keep writing songs, whether people hear them or not. If people like them, that's great. But it's the purpose bone. You got to have purpose or you're just going to fade, So I'll probably do that for the rest of my life and see where the road, if there's anything else. I don't know. It's kind of a fun time to be alive because I have no idea what's going to happen and I'm good with it.
That's a good mantra right there. Well, those are all the questions I have for you today, Matt. The new Squirts album is Squirts 3. It's out now through F-Bomb Records. People can stream it on Bandcamp. They can buy it through Vanity Music Group, I believe. And I wanted to tell you that it's a great album. I enjoyed it thoroughly, and I wish you the best of luck with everything. It sounds like you're killing it. You don't need me to wish you luck.
I do. George, you're the man. Thanks for the great questions, and you're a great guy. I appreciate the time.
Once again, I want to thank Matt Bissonette of the Squirts for for coming on the Rock is George podcast. Be sure to check out their latest album, The Squirts III, out now through F-Bomb Records. Head over to their Bandcamp page, take a listen to the album. If you like what you hear, buy a physical copy, support the artist. For all things Matt Bissonette and the Squirts, head over to Matt's official website, mattbissonette.com. I also want to thank Dave Tedder of Headfirst Entertainment for making this interview possible. You've been great. I've been George Dionne. Discover your next favorite artist on the Rock is George podcast.